And here we go. Hey everyone. Here we go. All right. So we will. We're gonna have to see how late I wind up going tonight. As anyone might expect, I'm a little sleep deprived. But we'll see. We'll see. For now, just planning on going the normal amount. Not a problem. Michael is well handled. He is napping as he has been doing a lot of at the moment, at least. And Serge is already in bed, so we're doing pretty well. I did fiddle with a couple of the settings for my streaming software, so I may wind up cutting down on the drop frames for this just a little bit, but we'll have to see. Hopefully it helps. A couple of the things that did help, but no guarantees. I'm not sure why this game in particular has issues streaming smoothly, but it may just be the some weird graphics card incompatibility things that I thought I partially fixed, but is only kind of fixed. So we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, so let's get back into it, and as people come in and join us. All right. So, if we recall from last time, we were just leaving Feros. We just dealt with our giant mind-controlling plant monster. That was a lot of fun. We got to talk a lot about the will and about mind control and about the possibilities of mind control and what that means for the will and all that stuff. So, if we do wind up talking back over some of that material, no problem with me. A lot of that is my academic area specialization anyway. I do a lot of work on ethics and action theory and meta ethics and all that, where all that stuff intersects. So if the conversation wanders back that way, all the better. It may wind up doing so, especially because we're going to be probably encountering some indoctrination stuff, some Reaper indoctrination stuff, at least vaguely, at least allusions to it in some of the conversations, so it might come up as well. Assuming we're done on Feros, which I think we are. I think we finished up all of our little side quests, but I'll make sure. If that is, oh yeah, we just have on to Novaria next, but I'll wait for that. Let's not do that yet. How do I talk to Mom? Oh, Comrade, got it. Okay, I'll have to go do that. Go talk to Shepard's mom. I'm just not going to do this one. I almost never remember to do that one. It's a huge pain. In any case, I want to do a lot of going back onto the Citadel and talk to everybody we want to talk to. Probably see Conrad Werner again. And
Commander,
the whole shebang. So let's let them talk.
Pale. Are you suffering any ill effects from the cipher?
The cipher shook me up a bit.
I might be able to help you. I am an expert on the protheans. If I join my consciousness to yours, maybe we can make some sense of it.
Do it. Hurry. We don't have much time.
Relax, Commander. Embrace eternity. That was incredible. All this time, all my research, yet I never dreamed. I am sorry. The images were so vivid. I never imagined the experience would be so intense. You are remarkably strong-willed, Commander. What you have been through, what you have seen, would have destroyed a lesser mind.
Did you see anything?
The beacon on Eden Prime must have been badly damaged. Large parts of the vision are missing. The data transferred into the Commander's mind is incomplete.
Yeah, so this is roughly the sci-fi equivalent, the parallel sci-fi equivalent of the Vulcan mind meld, as Kylie pointed out. It brings back the interesting, maybe accusatory parallels with Star Trek Picard, where a main-ish character, through a series of weird contrivances, one of the central cast finds a vision left by some kind of ancient race that's supposedly a warning, similar to this sort of thing. And it has to be transferred by a Vulcan mind meld. So, and of course, the vision, I put this in a comment a couple of 2 or 3 streams ago as well. You can look at the similarities between the two scenes. If you've seen the show, you'll see the similarity if you see both of them side by side. I forget what it's called in the show, what their version of the warning is. It's not abjuration, it's something like that, though. It's some arcane sounding word for warning. But yeah, it's very, very similar in terms of a Vulcan mind meld, including there are significant sexual overtones in both, because explicitly in the lore for Asari, it is the same way that Asari mate and have children, etc. So that might wind up being something we wind up talking about, although they can consciously determine what and to what degree they're doing this, so it's not like it is explicitly just sex. There is a little more nuance to it that they're careful to make clear, and it's not just a metaphor for sex, because the Vulcan mind meld, at least at some points in some shows, especially in Enterprise, is pretty straightforwardly a sexual allegory. So that's there's a lot of similarities. Kylie says, it also sort of reminded me when the 11th Doctor shares his memories via headbutting people. Yeah, even if I remember right, even some of the imagery there from those scenes where it's really flashy and oversaturated kind of stuff. Yeah. Trying to think. I know this came out before then, but that sort of thing, the memory sharing thing by mysterious and wise aliens, is a pretty long-lasting trope in science fiction. So, let's see what they've got to say about it.
You sure you didn't come across any kind of clue or hint? Something we might have missed?
Everything I saw, you already know. You were right about the Reapers. The Protheans were destroyed by a race of sentient machines. I think it is obvious there is a connection between the Reapers, the Prothean extinction, and the Conduit, but I did not see anything that would help us find it.
Okay, one other thing, pet peeve. Mass Effect is notoriously uncareful about the phrasing, and it's something that a lot of science fiction properties do wrong. And it's the difference between sentient and sapient. So sentient means capable of experiencing sensation. So animals are sentient in this categorization. Sapient means rational or self-reflecting, capable of self-reflection, capable of abstract thought. Humans are sapient. Humans and the rest of the aliens in Mass Effect, the sapient races, so to speak. And this is a huge difference that is often gotten wrong in a lot of science fiction properties. If I'm not mistaken, I think Star Trek tends to get it right, although I have noted at times when they've gotten it wrong and they do it without noticing, and I think it might depend on which series you're talking about. I'm not sure. One that gets it consistently wrong to the point where it is acknowledged in the lore as a technical term is Star Wars. Star Wars consistently refers to what really means sapient. They use the word sentient. And in some of the EU material, the Extended Universe Legend material, they actually explain that this is a technical term, even though its original meaning doesn't technically mean what it's supposed to mean, right? What doesn't technically mean sapient. They just use the term for it for reasons. Presumably the reason being that early writers didn't get the difference right, and they got it kind of muddled. And so they wound up kind of retconning. But yeah, this is something that Mass Effect is a little bit inconsistent about, and for how hard of a science fiction world it is, it always disappoints me a little bit, because it's a little pet peeve of mine, especially with my my relative focus on philosophy of mind and I wouldn't say philosophy of mind, but certainly action theory and moral psychology. Where the difference between sentience and sapience is critically important. In fact, when the stream is over, I'll put a link to it in the description to my discussion of Aristotle's model of the soul, where he makes this distinction very, very clearly in the 4th century BC, before any kind of science fiction. I hesitate to say that, but I'm fairly certain that the earliest science fiction was the 1st or 2nd century BC. Long story, and I don't remember all of it, if that's a curiosity. I forget what it's called, but I think it was from Apuleius, the same guy who wrote Metamorphosis. But I'm not sure about that, don't quote me. In any case, though, yeah, Aristotle makes this distinction really clearly. If you're looking for it, it's his distinction between sensitive and rational soul. They're two different things. They're very importantly different. They, in fact, mean different things. They function differently. And they are useful not only for categorizing the actions of an individual soul, but also for categorizing kinds of things, kinds of beings. Right? So certain beings are sentient. In other words, they have animal souls, but certain beings are sapient in that they have rational souls. Anyway, little pet peeve. It bothers me a lot. It's been bothering me since we started streaming this game, so I figured I would bring it up. So, moving on.
What's our next move?
I was able to interpret the data relayed through your vision, what was there at least, but something was missing. Saren must have the missing information. Maybe he found another beacon. If we can find the missing data from your vision, I can... I am sorry. The joining is exhausting. I should go to the medical bay and lie down for a moment.
Dr. Chalkwash should take a look at you.
That will not be necessary. I just need some rest. Somewhere quiet.
We're done here. Dismissed.
Bye, everyone.
I sent off the
to my
Feros
mom.
report, Commander. You want me to patch you through to the Council?
Oh, yeah, them first, I guess.
Patch him through, Joker.
Setting up the link now, Commander.
Commander, Exogenia should have told us about the Thorian. It would have made your job much easier.
You might have been able to capture it for study instead of destroying it.
The Thorian liked to enslave minds. Anyone who studied it would have ended up as one of its thralls.
Perhaps it's for the best then. At least the colony was saved.
Of course it was saved. Shepard would go to any lengths to help a human colony.
Being human had nothing to do with it. They were in trouble.
Admirable. But sometimes Spectres have to make sacrifices. I hope you're willing to do that when the time comes.
Goodbye, Commander. We will be waiting for your next report.
I was really tempted to hang up on him, but no, Shepard needed to make a stand on that. She's not just going to let them go accuse her of being pro-human. You know, that'd be just kind of giving in, right? That'd be admitting they're right. She can't do that.
Computer, give me a real-time connection to the Dreadnought Kilimanjaro. I want to speak to my mother, Exo Shepard.
Shepard speak? Oh, hi. I don't have time for a personal call right now. I'm on duty.
I know what that's like. Do you remember Lieutenant Zabaleta from the Einstein?
Ernesto? Have you heard from him? He was one of the Marines who guarded the CIC. We shared a watch. I lost track of him after there was an incident.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's... I know you don't have time for a personal call. Anyway, let's talk personal stuff. Kylie says, oh my God, the Asari Counselor looks like they have the eyes of a shapeshifter. It could be an effect of the hologram. The holograms in all of these games are a little bit wonky. They make people look a little bit strange, including the aliens. because they're partially translucent, and when you make a 3D character model, especially using Xbox 360 graphics or the equivalent, partially translucent, it gets kind of weird. Or she's evil. Who knows? It's possible.
I've seen him here on the Citadel. Looks like he's had some hard times.
I don't doubt it. You remember the Batarian raid on Mindwar in 2170? You were in high school. The Einstein's task group responded to the Mayday. The Batarians were still pulling out when the Marines hit groundside. Zabaleta was one of the first down. He was never quite the same after.
I don't understand. What happened down there?
About every abomination that a sentient being can do to another. To a slaver, a person is just another animal. And humans aren't always liked out here. We heard about corralling, culling. They'd shoot those they couldn't use, implant control devices in the skulls of those they could, without anesthetic.
Blaker says, so Homo sapiens means wise man. Strange choice. I mean, that's essentially an indication that Homo sapiens refers to. If you want to stretch out the definition into as many words as possible, it would be wise, or not wise technically, rational, because there isn't so much a distinction there in Latin. So rational animal of this type. Homo meaning same, of the same type, same as the speaker. Sapiens meaning rational or thinking. Right, so yeah, there's and I mean technically, if you want to get overly technical, isn't the genealogical name Homo sapiens sapiens? Like sapiens is in there twice. I don't know what as a distinction of, but I know it's a genus species thing, and because we don't have any living, we humans don't have any living genus genotypical cousins or something like that. If I remember, I might be making this up, or I might have misheard this, but if that's that makes it even weirder and even more, I don't know, hubristic maybe. I do like that that's carried through here in Mass Effect, and in a lot of other science fiction does a neat job at this, of making humans out to be the kind of how do I say it, the so arrogant that they think they're the only intelligent ones type, right? So we get made fun of for calling other life forms aliens. Whereas we don't often get referred to as aliens in most contexts. Presumably in Mass Effect, that's explained by our relative novelty on the galactic stage. Right? We haven't been part of this whole big galactic society thing for very long. It's like 30-something years at this point. So, we've had less than a generation to adapt. So, I guess that's fair. But at the same time, I really like that that trope being played with of, we call ourselves human, super wise. So that, I like that getting played with, because that strikes me as exactly how we would behave in a galactic society. We would just automatically assume that we're the smart ones and the rest of them are either, or like as you said, we're the bar, or we're the baseline, right? Yeah, we might also just sort of assume that we just think of ourselves as average, and then just compare every other species to either smarter than humans, they're the smart ones, or dumber than humans, they're the dumb ones, or stronger than humans, they're the strong ones, that kind of thing. Humans are assumed to have no stat modifiers, to put it in RPG terms. Yeah. So anyway, that's a solid point. I think that's our some of our human pride showing, maybe, which you get with Ashley and whatnot. Well, another thing about this Mindwar. The Batarian slavers taking a human colony. This is one of the backgrounds that you can choose for Commander Shepard. She could have survived this Batarian invasion of Mindwar. And that gives very different interactions with a lot of people because of the different background and how you've associated with invasion, with slavery, with aliens, with Batarians in particular, right? it becomes it gives you a few additional dialogue options. There are a couple of variant quests. Like for this one, you don't talk to your mother here. Instead, you meet, if I remember right, I think it's you meet another survivor, either of Mindwar or of something similar, so Batarian slavers, and you basically have to talk her down off a ledge, that kind of thing. It's a really hard-hitting quest because of this background, but it's really neat. It's well done. It deals with, unlike some cases of how Batarian slavers are portrayed as sort of cartoonish mustache-twirling villains, or as sort of geopolitical buffoons. I think this really treats the issue with some seriousness. In fact, there's this is a pet peeve of mine. I'll see if I can find it at some point, maybe for another stream. I don't want to sift through every planet everywhere. I don't even remember if the description of it was in this game, but I've mentioned before how all of the planets have their own little descriptions to them. Describes what is interesting about each planet. Well, there's a human colony with a significant Batarian presence. It's explained in the little codex entry that they had recently abolished the minimum wage, quote, effectively re-legalizing slavery on whatever the name of the planet is. That's hilariously absurd. Lack of a minimum wage is far from the same thing as slavery, and you can guess why. Primarily, it has to do with the voluntariness or lack thereof in terms of slavery. Even in a case with no minimum wage, no legally mandated minimum wage, the kind of thing that you see here is not automatically going to start happening. That would still presumably be a crime, even on a planet like that. So, there you go. That's one of those cases where this sort of issue is taken very lightly and not treated very seriously. So yeah, let's hear the rest of our story here.
He has post-traumatic stress because of what he saw?
He tried to keep working, but it rode him. He showed up drunk on duty more and more. We couldn't always cover for him. The Alliance discharged him. Everyone knew he drank because of what he'd seen down there, even if he never talked about it. Especially because he never talked about it.
For it to have affected him that deeply, he must have been a very sensitive man.
He was. Always in laughter and tears. If you see him, tell him we still worry about him. Tell him to go to the Veterans Affairs office. I have to go. But take care of yourself. You're making us proud. Kilimanjaro out.
Alright, so that's another thing to do when we get back to the Citadel. Gotta talk to Zabaleta. Let's see. How's our crew doing? Let's head downstairs. So yeah, there is okay, I don't actually need anything here. So I do want to go through and have a chat with everybody. So feel free to continue asking things, and I'll take any kind of questions or comments or points in between dialogue bits.
Do you have some time to talk now, Commander?
Let's hear it, Lieutenant. I'm always open to my officers.
We've played it pretty close to the book so far, but we're a long way from backup. We've got some tough calls to make. I'm just saying, try to leave yourself a way out. I've seen what cutting corners can do, and I'd hate to have that happen to you, Shepard. Commander.
It's a personal observation, Caden.
Maybe that's not my place. I don't want to send any bad signals, Commander. Just, working on what I've picked up. You tell me if I'm going too far.
Okay, so here we go. And now we get into the notorious love triangle of this game, and why BioWare makes soap operas disguised as RPGs. I absolutely love Caden. He gets a really bad reputation for being boring. I cannot disagree more. Even his romance path is a lot of people again will say it's boring. I don't get that one bit. He is genuinely hilarious, and dear God, does he have balls. Kylie, yes, as I was indicating, yes, Caden definitely has the feels for Shep. Blake, you said I just like that you brought up voluntary job filing or filling. Many countries don't have minimum wage. They need to compete for a workforce. Yeah. So I'll come back to the whole romance thing after we finish the conversation. But yeah, Blake, you're right. A minimum wage is not the only thing keeping people from working for nothing. People's unwillingness to work for nothing is keeping people from working for nothing. There's a certain point at which you're trading your labor force for a wage is no longer worth the exchange, and you could be better off working for yourself in some capacity, right? Whether that is, traditional self-employment, whether that is, how do I put it, just even like subsistence farming or hunter-gathering, that kind of thing, going out into the wild and becoming a mountain man, whatever. Implausible as that is, there's a point at which that becomes a better option than working for nothing, obviously. Right, so okay, there you go. In addition, as you pointed out, there is competition for laborers on the other side as well that keeps wages from being. God, I just saw CJ, I just saw your comment. I will come back to that. Oh God, oh my God, that's awful. Oh, poor Garrus. Anyway, all right. So yeah, I was saying, right? There's competition for workers. There is workforce competition in addition to competition for finding a job, right? So there's it's a matter of I mean, realistically, it's supply and demand. The equilibrium price for labor will never be zero, right? Unless what you're talking about is something that is literally post-scarcity, in which case maybe, but that would just mean that no one would pay anyone for anything because everyone would have super abundant resources, which is probably in principle impossible. You don't even have it in like Star Trek The Next Generation because people still need to do stuff. Right? Work still needs to get done even if material needs are more or less met. So anyway, so yeah, there are other factors to consider rather than just legally mandated wage rates, that kind of thing. All right.
I'm listening. Tell me why you feel the need to speak up.
I'm not questioning any decision you've made, Shepard. Let me be clear about that. It's just my experience that once someone lets something slide, it tends to pick up speed. Do you get my meaning?
Talk to me, Caden. You got a little black rain cloud sitting over your head.
I'll try to keep the deck dry. You know the records about the biotic training out on Jump Zero? They're all classified, because the Alliance made mistakes. After first contact, Kinetics was set up to track Element Zero exposures and develop implants for humans. Once we had an embassy on the Citadel, Kinetics could bring in experts instead of taking it slow.
The only experts would have to be aliens.
Dead on. Turians, actually. That's why Kinetics kept it a secret. They were afraid of what people back home would think, asking the Turians for help when we just fought a war with them.
And the Asari would have been more acceptable than the Turians.
Yes, but the company didn't go through the Citadel. It would have made Earth look weak, so they discreetly hired some Turian mercenaries.
Is there some reason we couldn't learn it on our own?
They didn't know where to start. Hell, it took a couple of years to even link biotics and Ezo. Forget trying to get the kids to move stuff. They had trouble just helping them not break their own limbs. And their choice of teachers didn't help much.
I'm sure Kinetics did what they thought was best.
It wasn't best for us. They brought in an ex-military Turian named Commander Vernus. To introduce himself, he liked to say, "I was at the helm of the dreadnought that killed your father." Well, I told him my dad wasn't in the war. He'd retired to Vancouver. My family had an inland home that matured to New Beachfront. Vernus had it in for me after that. He cut corners, pushed hard. I mean, you either came out a Superman or a wreck. A lot of kids snapped. A few died. The point of all of this, I guess, is that when you cut corners, it's not always obvious who pays for it.
So why are you telling me this? Is there something I can do to help you get over it?
I'm 32, Shepard. You don't serve as long as I have without coming to terms with yourself. You also learn that if someone is special to you, you help them. Try to keep them from making mistakes.
So here we go. All right, so let's address the Canadian elephant in the room. Okay, so soap opera disguised as an RPG. Yeah, 100%. That this is a soap opera disguised as an RPG. It has guns in it too, but that's ancillary to the main point. So CJ says he's the manliest companion, not a simp like Garrus. Phew. If I had more viewers, people would be mad about that. There is an extremely loyal online Shepard X Vicarian shipping community, and they are very, very dedicated and highly opinionated. It is. Yeah, I don't really get it. Honestly, for me, Caden is makes more sense as you know, boyfriend or husband material for Shepard. And I'll talk about why I kind of think that. But Garrus, not so much. Garrus is, I don't know if I'd call him a simp. Would I? No. Conrad Werner's kind of a simp, not Garrus. He's begging for pictures and stuff. Anyway, no. Garrus is the best bro. He's the comrade in arms. I don't see that as becoming romantic. It doesn't really click with me so much. But Caden, I like. He is, in fact, I think the manliest companion. I mean, got to be careful with James Vega on the roster in 3, but maybe he's a little more machismo than manly. Anyway, might be a difference we talk about at some point. In any case, yeah, he is very much the serious business kind of guy, who takes charge when appropriate, but not, as you can see, not when it would be insubordination. You know, he is properly military, but so he respects the chain of command. But at the same time, he is definitely as assertive as he could possibly need to be. To the point where if you're dating somebody else in Mass Effect 3, he will still ask Shepard out. So let's say, CJ on the subject says he's the extreme submissive in the relationship if they get together, and his awkwardness makes him more of an oaf than a strong support pillar for Shepard. I assume you mean Garrus. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, okay. He's smooth, he's suave, all of that, but he's also, he does not take himself seriously in the same way that Caden does. He is definitely a dweeb, and I absolutely love him in the role of dweeby friend who is an absolutely unbeatable badass, but is also the awkwardest little teddy bear you've ever heard of, which is just hilarious. Especially in 3, in the Citadel DLC, which is basically a bunch of in-jokes rolled into a bizarre plot. But you know, when if Shepard and Garrus are not dating at that point, there's 2 options. If they're together, then they dance, which makes no sense because everyone knows Shepard can't dance. It's a running joke. It's been a running joke since 2008 when the game came out. Caden gotta have a wheelbarrow for his massive balls. Oh god. Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. But yeah, the other version, if Kaidan and if Garrus and Shepard aren't together, then Shepard plays wingman for Garrus and tries to get him to ask out a Turian woman at a bar, and he is painfully awkward at it. It is hilariously awkward. Something like he accidentally calls her an alcoholic because she might come to the bar often, or something like that. And it's like, oh man, you poor bastard. Shepard desperately needs to help. So yeah, I get it. I can see something like the appeal that he's the I don't know what the term for it would be. The awkward guy that you get to seduce, I guess. I don't know, something like that. But yeah, I don't see it as being a full-on romantic relationship. I don't see it working like that. I see it more as a like I said, camaraderie in arms. Whereas Kaidan, I can totally see as the one who is man enough to, the one who is man enough to be on an even footing with Commander Shepard. Especially because, spoiler, I guess, if he survives into Mass Effect 3, he also becomes a Spectre. He becomes the second human Spectre. So there you go. So I'll finish out this conversation, and then I want to talk about the other romance option in this game, which is Liara. So we're going to talk about that as well.
Special, huh?
If I'm out of line, just say the word.
Okay, so... And here we go. Now I have to... damn. Now I have to decide whether to shut it down or not. Balls. I wanted to delay the... Well, not technically. There is the really awkward scene that... No, fuck it. I'm going for the awkward scene. Sorry, guys, but I'm totally... Oh, God. Yeah, I'm going for the awkward scene. Okay, yeah.
You're not out of line, Kaidan. But there are regs.
I get you, Shepard. I don't make a habit of complicating the chain of command. Just think about what I said.
All right.
Talk later, Kaidan.
Anyway,
I'd like that.
The awkward scene is the infamous love triangle scene. It'll show up eventually in probably a couple of streams from now. It's freaking hilarious. Anyway, I'm going for it. In any case, the other romance option is Liara. And I will let some of the dialogue speak for itself, I think. It's also worth noting that it is another one of these things where the writing for BioWare does this thing where if you don't shut it down from the start by being a complete dick to Liara at every opportunity, then the game just kind of assumes that you're in a relationship. So it is basically the canon relationship. It is the intent from BioWare. So there's that. Anyway.
Commander, are you coming to check up on me?
You look much better. How are you feeling?
Dr. Chakwas assures me I am going to be fine. I was impressed with her knowledge of Asari physiology.
You're in good hands. Dr. Chakwas knows what she's doing.
I get the feeling you want to ask me something, Commander.
We already talked about Benezia and culture, didn't we? I think we did.
Tell me about yourself, Liara.
Me? I am afraid I am not very interesting, Commander. I spend most of my time on remote digs, unearthing mundane items buried in long-forgotten Prothean ruins.
Sounds dangerous. And lonely.
Sometimes I would run afoul of indigenous life forms or stumble across a small band of mercenaries or privateers, but I was always careful. Until the geth followed me to Artemis Tau. I never found myself in any situation my biotics could not handle. As for the solitude, well, that is one aspect that most appealed to me. Sometimes I just need to get away from other people.
You don't like other people?
I suppose it comes from being a matriarch's daughter. People expected me to follow in Benezia's footsteps. They wanted me to become a leader of our people. Matriarchs guide their followers into the future. They seek the truth of what is yet to come. Maybe that's why I became so interested in the secrets of the past. It sounds so foolish when I say it out loud. It sounds like I became an archaeologist simply to spite Benezia.
Weird how, Kylie?
All children rebel against their parents. It's a natural part of growing up.
Aha, you share the wisdom of the matriarch, Shepard. That is exactly what Benezia said when I told her of my decision. But there was more to it than that. I felt drawn to the past. The Protheans were these wondrous, mysterious figures. I wanted to know everything about them. That is why I find you so fascinating. You were marked by the beacon on Eden Prime. You were touched by working Prothean technology.
Oh, I hear upset little baby. Hopefully he is okay. If not, feel free to hit me up in the chat and I will come and help. I will definitely have that take priority. So if that's necessary, I will go ahead and do that. Anyway, yeah, so weird how. Blake says, I'm not afraid. I'm afraid I'm not very interesting, Commander. It was scary, but maybe unintentionally. But like everything else. So, unintentionally scary. I get where you're coming from. I think I'm fairly certain that the impression that that the writers are trying to give off is the demure sort of the I don't know, the like, I don't know, the nerdy mousy librarian kind of thing. The genuinely does not see herself as very interesting, so when you do, it's a big deal, or that kind of thing, at least as far as I can tell. And again, like I said, it's a soap opera. It's a lot of the point of a lot of these conversations is the character relationships, whether those are romantic or not. More than anything, I think where BioWare, especially older BioWare like this, really shines is in character interactions and how the characters are written and how the interactions between them are written. So,
sounds like you want to dissect me in a lab somewhere.
What? No, I did not mean to insinuate. I never meant to offend you, Shepard. I only meant that you would be an interesting specimen for an in-depth study. No, that's even worse.
Oh god. See, now, do you see what I mean? That I think explains exactly what I was talking about in terms of the oh, she's so awkward, kind of cute type thing, you know. Anyway.
Calm down, Liara. I was only joking.
Joking? Oh, by the goddess, how could I be so dense? You must think I am a complete and utter fool. Now you know why I prefer to spend my time in the field with data disks and computers. I always seem to say something embarrassing around other people. Please, just pretend this conversation never happened.
Liara is such a mood. Okay, great. Yeah, no, she is, she's that kind of awkward. You know exactly what I'm talking about, with the half a dozen winks from Blake. Yeah.
Do you know why Benezia joined up with Saren?
I don't understand it. She was always outspoken about the need for the Asari to become more involved in shaping galactic events. Maybe she thought allying herself with Saren would somehow be for the greater good in the long run. At least I hope so.
That's so rude. No.
This hurts you, doesn't it?
None of this makes any sense to me. I have not spoken to Benezia in many years, but I know her, and this was not like her. Something changed.
I'd like to know more about the Asari.
We were the first species to discover the Citadel. We were instrumental in forming the Council, and we always strive to be the voice of peaceful cooperation in galactic disputes. My people believe we are all part of a single galactic community. Each species contributes something to the greater whole. Although we seek to understand other species, it seems few of them seek to understand us. The galaxy is filled with rumors and misinformation about my people.
Like what?
Most of the inaccuracies are centered around our mating rituals. My species is monogendered. Male and female have no real meaning for us. We still require a partner to reproduce. This second parent, however, may be of any species and any gender.
See, if you answer with like the bottom left stuff, then she gets the hint. But anything else, like I said, the game assumes that you are in fact in a relationship already.
I don't understand. Your species can mate with anyone?
Mating is not quite the proper term, not as you understand it. Physical contact may or may not be involved, but it is not an essential element of the union. The true connection is mental. Our physiology allows us to meld with other beings. We can touch the very depths of their minds. We explore the genetic memory of their species. We share the most basic elements of their individual and racial identities. We then pass these traits on to our daughters. It is how we learn to grow as a species and how we develop a greater understanding of other races.
What happens to your partner after the union?
Every relationship is different. Some unions are a single encounter with both parents parting ways afterwards. Others can be more long-term. Sometimes an Asari and her partner will stay together for many decades.
Do you know who Matriarch Benezia chose as her partner?
She rarely spoke of her partner. Though I know my father, if you want to use that term, was another Asari.
Benezia never told you her partner's name?
Union with our own kind is no longer common, not for the purposes of reproduction. Most Asari believe it weakens our species. Asari daughters inherit racial traits from the father species. If both parents are Asari, then nothing has been gained, or so conventional wisdom would hold. I am what is sometimes called a pureblood, though no Asari would ever be cruel enough to say the word to my face. It is a great insult among my people. It is possible Benezia's partner was embarrassed by their union. She may have been too ashamed to publicly acknowledge me as her offspring.
How could anyone abandon their own child?
I cannot answer that. This is all speculation on my part. It is possible she wanted to be part of my life, but something happened to her before she had the chance. Benezia never spoke of her partner. Whatever happened, it caused her too much pain to dwell on it. She raised me by herself, though that is not uncommon. Many Asari raise their children alone, particularly if the father species is short-lived. Often the partner will pass on long before the child reaches maturity.
That's what we got. Okay, bye.
I should go.
Goodbye, Shepard.
Blake says it is strange that each species has a somewhat homogenous culture. Yeah, Planet of Hats kind of thing is, again, a really common sci-fi writing shortcut, if you want, that there is Asari culture. At the same time, I guess you could probably summarize human culture in such a broad swaths kind of way. Of the various species, a lot of them are pretty homogenous in that way. Krogan are pretty much all warrior types, lone wolf warrior types. Turians are very, very hierarchical and militaristic and by the book. That's kind of their thing. That's their culture as a whole. But at the same time, there are exceptions to that. So they do a little bit of subverting those sorts of things. I'm just going to run around the hangar while I talk about this. You find out later, and most of this is kind of explored more in the later games in 2 and 3, that the Asari do have different, even on their homeworld, they have separate nations. They have separate nations with something like a, I guess call it a governing council or something, which is basically a, it's only, it's something like, I think it's a direct digital democracy or something like that, for all Asari to participate in things that affect all Asari, that sort of thing, council relations and that sort of thing. But there are apparently cultural differences between the different regions on Thessia, their homeworld, and then also, of course, the colonies. There are Asari colonies. Krogan, you meet a galaxy-renowned, brilliant Krogan scientist in Mass Effect 2. So there you go. There is at least one exception, although they are pretty relatively homogenous. Turians have a weird cultural history that you kind of find out about, but only really through some really deep interactions if you talk enough with Garrus. And then also if you just read the Codex. You really have to read backstory to realize the thing with Turian differences. Because Turian culture is really divided into two. There are the homeworld Turians, and there are the colonial Turians. And those are broad categorizations. Some of the colonial Turians are also kind of homeworld culture. The main, what you think of as Turian culture, what Garrus talks about, is the homeworld culture of very strict hierarchy. It's a very very high context and collectivist sort of society. It is culturally very heavily based on Rome, on Imperial Rome. And so it's very, again, hierarchical. Everyone is military. It's almost a Robert Heinlein Starship Troopers type society. Everyone is expected to do some kind of public service, usually military. Education is all through the military, all of that kind of stuff. Military ranks for everyone, that sort of thing. But there are also the sort of colonial Turians. And you find out later there was a long ago, I forget exactly how long ago, but a while ago, long before the events of this game, before even Turians had first contact with the other races. They had a war for unification. Their colonies, their far-flung colonies, tried to break away from their central government, something like American Revolution style, where the colonies had practical independence, even though they were under the same governmental structure. But then the centralized authority wanted to start sort of centralizing control. So the colonies revolted, turned into a war, Unification Wars, I think it was called. And eventually it unified Turian culture, but there is still this kind of cultural divide between the sort of central Palaven, their capital planet, and some associated colonies, and the rest of the outlying Turian colonies, with kind of a dominant culture being the centralized one. It's really similar, as far as I can tell, it's really similar to what you see in like the backstory of Firefly. If you've seen Firefly, if not, it's fantastic. It's only one season long, but go watch it. It's an amazing show from Joss Whedon, which was all about that sort of unification under a central authority, and then the kind of backwater planets that don't want to go along with it. Even after they lose a war for unification, same kind of thing. So yeah, Turians do have some cultural diversity. Quarians do. Quarians, you actually, as you meet more Quarians throughout the 3 games, different Quarians have different accents because they have different ships. And they also have slightly different cultural quirks, although a lot of them are pretty similar. So Mass Effect at least tries, at least in some cases, to sort of eventually diversify the various species. Then again, they do kind of lampshade it as well by talking about how strangely how strangely heterogeneous humans are. How humans are so unique and so different from each other, and they have this independent streak, and they're very adaptable, yada yada yada. All of the stuff that make humans in every cliched sci-fi. So yeah, there is that. That is one of the. They kind of lean into the trope in some cases, but they kind of draw attention to it. They kind of lampshade it and say, well, yeah, it's kind of weird that these other cultures are so monocultural, but, fine. Let's just have them talk about how weird it is that humans have so many different cultural quirks. So there you go. That's how they kind of handle that. And I mean, again, given enough time, it's reasonable enough to assume that something like a monoculture with some divergences would develop, because most of these cultures are ancient. Asari have been spacefaring for like 2,500 years or something. Yeah, check out. I mean, this shows you the depth of the codex just for this race. Just for this game. For some perspective.
The Asari were the first species to discover the Citadel. When the Solarians arrived...
Okay, all of these, all the primary ones, so that's all the council races, all the extinct races, most of the non-council species, a bunch of non-sapient creatures, all of this stuff, these have lengthy, voice-acted codex entries, like this long for each of them. That is one of my favorite parts about this game, is how in-depth and detailed the lore is, which is way more than you would typically expect for a sci-fi game, especially especially a video game, and especially the first video game in a series, in a franchise. Blake says, yeah, that makes sense to me. Additionally, becoming aware of other species might unify a species just by their physical similarity. Physical similarity, cultural similarity, political unity, any of that stuff could absolutely lead to a kind of reacting by unifying. And we see that in our culture today, right? In our world today. If you ask someone today, if you ask a sort of, here you go, if you ask a white person, what European culture is like, they'll tell you. Most of the time. Like, unless somebody is thinking really, really carefully about it, or they don't identify with that culture, they'll be able to tell you, well, what is European culture? Oh, well, they can explain. Now, if you ask an Englishman that, they might distinguish and say, well, continental Europe or us. Fine. But for the most part, yeah, you can totally do that, right? Because hundreds of years ago, you could not have asked anyone from Europe what European culture was. They would not and could not have told you, because there was no such thing. If the only unifying factor in Europe was, I mean, more than 500 years ago was the church, but even then, in the period of the early modern period, the post-Reformation era, literally nothing. The only thing that united Europe, at least in the eyes of any Europeans, was the fact that their disunity, the fact of their disunity. But then once that sort of culture, if you want to call it a culture, started making contact with people outside of itself, they sort of unified into something not cohesive, like in the logical sense, but at least something that you can identify as a commonality. So yeah, we have this tendency to as our horizons expand, the divisions within those horizons become, maybe you can say less meaningful. Maybe it might be better to say easier to traverse, right? So there's less of a difference, even though there are still really significant cultural differences, say between French and German culture. It is far more plausible today than it would have been a few hundred years ago to adapt and adopt elements of French culture into German culture, or vice versa, or however you want to take that. Right? And so similarly, we could probably say the same about human culture in this context, or even more so Asari culture, because again, Asari are very old as a species, and even individually long-lived. So they have the conservative impulse on the one hand of old people maintaining tradition, but at the same time they have a lot of time to adapt to new information. So yeah, there you go. So I think Blake, yeah, you're right about the this tendency to unify, or at least to blur the differences to an extent when encountering something outside. I talked about this on, what was it, the first stream, maybe? When I was talking about what it means for something to be human in the relevant sense, which really I'm talking about personhood, or rationality, rational animal. Right? And how kind of what we the way we talk about humanism today, the kind of internationalist humanism that we talk about, and we see, my prototypical example of this is Bill Nye the Science Guy talks like this a lot, and talks about the things that unite us primarily being biological. Right? We're all of the same species, all of that sort of thing. Well, yeah, but that just sounds like racism if you put it into this context, in the sci-fi, particularly the Mass Effect context. In fact, later on, I will pause for this because this is once we get to it. There's actually a guy in a political party called Terra Firma that is basically just propounding 21st century humanism, like early 21st century, 20th, 21st century humanism. And it comes off as super racist. And everyone around him acknowledges that he is a racist, just explicitly. Because he's pro-human. That's just in this context, because the horizons have sufficiently expanded, that's just the same thing that you would see today as like a white nationalist or something. Right? So yeah, that is a fascinating topic, and how that changes, especially how it changes when you're, as I mentioned last time when we talked about this sort of thing, when your intellectual baseline for who you consider us versus who you consider them is not properly metaphysical, right? When you're not talking about personhood, rather you're talking about species. That's when this gets really weird, and what you might call, it's not going to sound right, but hopefully you understand what I mean, enlightened racism kind of slips in. This kind of it's still racism, so it's still prejudicial and insofar as it is bad, but it's the race is just bigger, right? You used to be able to be here you go. In the US, you used to be able to be racist against Irish people. That's not really a thing anymore. Okay, just because the horizons have expanded. So there we go. There's a lot to talk about on issues of race as it pertains to species. It's one of the topics I'm really fascinated in from a metaphysical anthropology standpoint. Anyway, so let's talk to Tally about and see if we can find some of these differences in Quarian culture. I don't know I know we've already talked a lot about Quarian culture, so I don't want to rehash a lot of that. But let's see if she has anything new to say.
Oh, hello, Shepard.
Are you okay?
I don't know. Your ship is amazing, and your crew's been really great to me, especially your chief engineer. But I just sort of feel out of place. The Normandy runs so smooth it feels like we're not even moving, and the engines are so quiet. How do you sleep at night?
The silence wakes you up?
Back on the flotilla, the last thing you want to hear is silence. It means an engine's died or an air filter shut down. I guess you don't have to worry about that here. But old habits die hard. But it's more than just the silence. This ship feels so empty. It's like half the crew is missing. Back home, I couldn't wait to go on my pilgrimage. I couldn't wait to get away from the crowds. Now that I'm out here, I kind of miss them.
Anyone sleep with a fan on? And then if the power goes out and the fan turns off, you awake immediately? That's what Tally's experiencing, except now it's at all times, and it's a little more dangerous than the fan turning off, because if the fan turns off, it means
what we have till it's gone.
That's true. I'm starting to wonder if that's what the pilgrimage is really about. It's given me a whole new perspective on my people and our culture. There's always a few who go on their pilgrimages and never return. I always assumed something bad happened to them, but maybe they just wanted a different life.
You do plan to return to the migrant fleet, right?
I could never abandon my people, Shepard. I will go back eventually, but we have to stop Saren first. Otherwise, I might not have a home to go back to.
Okay, we've already talked about all that. So yeah, I figured that would be a common experience for a lot of people. I never had a habit of it, but someone got me into a habit of it. A certain wife of mine got me into a habit of sleeping with the fan on. Funny story actually. related funny story, I guess. So I was
I should go.
a couple years ago,
See you later.
3 years ago, something like that. One of the hurricanes that came through knocked out our power for a few hours, which was fine for me. I didn't actually mind because I was horribly sick. I had a nasty cold that I was trying desperately to get over. So power went out, and I just decided, hell with it, I'm going to sleep. Not thinking too clearly, because I had a fever, I left the lamp beside my bed on, because it didn't matter. The power was out, right? And I figured, a light kind of turning on, that'll let me know that the power's back on. Of course, I hadn't thought this through, because I was also very sick, and I went to sleep, rolled over, facing this lamp. So naturally, when the power came back on, like an hour and a half later, I was immediately awoken with my barely closed eyes, literally a foot away from a lamp, with probably, I think I had like 101, 102 fever. Bad day. Very bad day. Anyway, yeah, that's, I guess, it's not really relevant to the whole sleeping with a fan on or sleeping with your noisy ship running, but whatever. So, Garrus eventually has a quest for us to do, so let's see if he actually wants to do that. So Kylie says the fan is sort of comforting because it gives the brain something to zone in on and calm down. Yeah, that makes sense. It's a solution to the mind wandering overly much, I guess you could say. My wife says I didn't used to either until I started needing it because of paranoia. Also, it's hot. That is true. I can't sleep when it's hot, so I am glad I've moved to sleeping with a fan on.
Commander, how are you?
Why did you want to be a C-Sec officer in the first place?
That's a good question. There were several reasons, I guess.
Like what?
Probably the same as most officers. I wanted to fight injustice, wanted to help people. I guess my father had something to do with it too. He was C-Sec, one of the best. I grew up hearing about his accomplishments or seeing his picture on the vids after a big arrest. He's taking my resignation pretty hard.
That's tough. But you'd think he'd be impressed you're going after Saren.
My father's a C-Sec man to the bone. Do things right or don't do them at all, he says. He thinks I'm being too rash, too impatient. He's worried I'll become just like Saren. He actually talked me out of becoming a Spectre when I was younger, for the same reasons.
You were asked to be a Spectre?
Well, I was targeted as a possible Spectre candidate, me and about 1,000 other Turian military recruits. I could have received special training, but my father didn't like it. He despises the Spectres. He hates the idea of someone having unlimited power with no accountability. He wouldn't like you, Commander. No offense.
Blake says, yes, when I hear sounds, I think it isn't safe. Yeah, that should sound very similar to what CJ would have to say. Yeah, especially we now live out in the middle of the country, so but at the same time, relatively near the highway. So noise is an intermittent thing rather than a constant thing, so it can kind of trip the mental alerts, if you want to say it that way. Kylie says an ideal bedroom temperature is at least 68 degrees. I assume you mean at most 68 degrees, because then I can use all the blankets. Yeah, fair. I always say, living in Florida my whole life, that if it were half as many degrees Fahrenheit, I would be much happier. No matter what the temperature is. Cut it in half, perfect.
I suppose I can understand his concern.
You can. But Saren's not going to play by our rules, C-Sec's rules. If you want to nail Saren, you need to send someone who isn't restricted by policies and procedures.
Just because you can break the rules doesn't mean you should. I don't need to stoop to Saren's level to stop him. And neither do you, Garrus.
I see what you mean, but I'll think about it. Thanks, Commander.
Alright. So, you see the tension with Garrus between the whole by-the-book Turian thing and the whole, and kind of not wanting to be so by-the-book and not wanting to stick so close to regulation kind of thing. That's kind of an indication of the kind of cultural divide among Turians as well that I was talking about earlier.
Commander?
What's your opinion of the last mission?
A little spooky how you handle that Jiang guy. Didn't figure you'd know how to speak corporate.
All you need to do is show them how getting what you want gets them what they want.
You make it sound easy. Frankly, I just wanted to put a few rounds in him and leave.
Do you have a few minutes to talk? One-on-one?
Sure. I was just watching some mail from home.
Oh, before I go, we saw Caden in a news vid about the Normandy. He's cute. Later, sis.
Let's pretend this never happened.
Are you interested in the lieutenant, Chief?
No, ma'am. And anyway, Scuttlebutt says he's already sweet on someone. What's up? You didn't come by to eavesdrop on family mail.
Oh no. Oh no, that's awkward. Alright, anyway.
Your family seems to be important to you.
Yeah, we've always been close. Me and my sisters especially. With Dad on duty so much, I had to help Mom raise them.
Where did you grow up?
All over. Same as you, I expect. We transferred a half a dozen times before I finished grade school. You go where personnel command sends you, right? I guess that's why I'm so tight with my sisters. We'd have to leave all our friends every 2 or 3 years.
You have more than one sister? Sounds like a big family.
Yeah, I'm the oldest, then Abby, then Lynn. Sarah's the youngest. She's still in high school. With 4 girls, Dad used to say he felt more outnumbered at home than on maneuvers.
Did your father serve with the fleet?
Yeah, took any crap posting he could get that offered space time. You know what? He worked his ass off trying to get recognized, but he never made it above serviceman 3rd class. He was real proud when I met Chief. First thing he did was salute.
What about your mother? You haven't mentioned her.
You must know what military wives are like. Strong because they have to be, able to raise kids while Dad's away on a 6-month cruise. She has a degree in planetary geology. She and Dad both wanted to see new worlds. She gave up her career to raise us, though.
I was an only child, but I get the idea. At least one of my parents was always on duty.
Yeah, military families, eh? With schedules like that, it's a wonder we ever have kids anymore. Things were tense between Sarah and me for a while. Then we bonded.
Sounds like a story. Feel like sharing?
Sarah got herself a boyfriend who wanted to go faster than she did, Mike. I didn't think he was a bad kid, just pushy. Lynn would send me these worried vid mails, and I'd tell her to relax.
If he really liked her, he wouldn't be pushy.
Yeah, of course. If he didn't ask at all, I'd wonder if he thought Sarah was ugly. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Mike thought they'd go for a romantic walk in the woods, because he figured it was past time they did the deed. She levered Mike face first into a tree and left. Didn't have a scratch on her. Good thing Mom and Dad had us all learn some kind of self-defense. I took emergency leave and walked Sarah to school for a few days.
You said all of your sisters learned self-defense?
Lynn did pistol practice, but didn't like it. She's kind of nervous. Sarah took Aikido. Abby decided to learn the sword. She always was a little weird. Likes big skirts and tops you have to tie her into. They do great things to her figure, though.
So, what did you learn?
One of Dad's friends taught me Marine hand-to-hand.
You traveled all the way home to walk your sister to school.
It was only a dozen light years, like a day's cruise. It's not like I was going to Earth or something. My last day out, Mike was waiting for us. Sarah had told her friends, so everyone at school knew what he did. He wasn't happy. I wanted to snap him in half, but Sarah gave me this look, this let me handle it, I need to do this alone look. She kept her cool, God bless her, as he screamed in her face. She just let him vent. Then he tried to punch her. I swear, she just flowed around him. Next thing I knew, he's face down on the sidewalk, and there's blood everywhere.
That's unbelievable. Sarah must be as good as you.
Better. I'm more or less a straight-up puncher. When he swung, she wasn't there anymore, and he fell. She helped him stop the bleeding and had me call an ambulance. She told the paramedics he fell. Before they took him to the hospital, Mike touched Sarah's arm. I thought he was gonna end up on the ground again. But he hung his head, whispered, "I'm sorry," and started crying. And she hugged him. The Williams women are a decisive bunch, Commander. We do things when we're ready. Not before, not after.
Your sister's something else. But you didn't mention your father at all. Was he on deployment?
Dad always wanted to serve in space, but he wanted us to have real ground under our feet. He'd say, space is beautiful, but you can't raise a family there. I cannot rest from travel. I will drink life to the lees. All times I've enjoyed greatly, have suffered greatly, both with those that loved me and alone. For always roaming with a hungry heart, much have I seen and known, cities of men and manners, climates, councils, governments.
I didn't know you liked classical literature.
Ulysses was my dad's favorite poem. Every time he shipped out, he recorded me reading it. He had a dozen versions when he retired.
Does he still like it?
I sure hope so. I read it to his grave every time I go home. Dad passed on a few years back. He's probably still watching, though.
You mean from wherever we go after death?
Dead on, Skipper. He's with God now. That's not a problem with you, is it? That I believe in God?
Everyone has the right to believe what they want. Says so in the Alliance Charter, only with fancier words.
I'm glad you're open-minded about it. I've met a few people who are really weirded out by my faith. Because I work in space, I can't believe in a higher power? Jeez. Hello, have you people looked out the window? How can you look at this galaxy and not believe in something? I should get back to my duties. Didn't mean to take up so much of your time.
Dismissed, Chief.
Ma'am.
So I really like Ash. She's great. Too bad she always dies. But no. There was a lot of great in the story. I figured I would just let that all play out, so you guys could have a good story time with Ashley Williams. I also want to say I like the effort put in for let's say religious representation in a game like this, because that is, I think, a pretty a common attitude to have in this sort of out beyond the stars kind of thing. Looking at the beauty of the universe and surmising from that a higher power, that kind of thing. That said, I do think that even BioWare, which tries, we'll say it tries, and actually it does a decently better job in some other places. It's not. How do I put this? There's a problem with how religion is represented in that it's not quite. There is the assumption that religion is an interiorized belief rather than something that one does, rather than something that affects one's actions in a really significant sort of way, right? Religion is reduced to belief in a lot of cases, right? So things like asking what you believe as a kind of substitute for asking about religion. That is I don't want to say inappropriate, but it's not the right way of asking the question of a genuinely religious person, somebody for whom religion is an aspect of their life, where that aspect has significant impacts. And this comes from a kind of, like I said, an interiorized idea of religion that kind of comes up from sort of Enlightenment shifts towards the secular. And by that I mean the sort of secular way of considering religion as a private part of one's public life, maybe something like that, right? In such a way that it is that one's religion is something that one believes, rather than it being believes in the really subjective, maybe, or I would even say shallow sense, rather than it being something that is taken seriously in the same sense of any other kind of belief, something that we assert as true would be, and then also not taken as something that is practical, something that affects not just one's private interior life, but affects one's exterior actions, one's social actions, even one's sort of political in the ancient sense. Political meaning our interactions with society as a whole, right? All those sorts of things ought to be affected by what we can call one's religion. So again, BioWare tends to... okay, so that's not fair. Mass Effect doesn't do a terribly good job figuring through how religion could and would work in space, because those are fascinating topics. I talked some about the sacraments and how that could fit into a world like this and a future like this. That was I spent most of a previous stream talking about that sort of thing. But yeah, it's one of those where... Okay, so it is acknowledged. It's in the in the codices, in all those endless codex entries. It is canon as far as the Mass Effect creators are concerned that various human religions still exist and are still common, perfectly common, to the point where 2 different popes are mentioned in some minor commentary things. So that is a thing, right? And that it presumably these issues are issues which are dealt with in universe, right, by the characters, by some characters at least, if not the characters we actually see on the ship. It's just that they're, again, not really dealt with in a serious enough matter, because things like questions like, can you, for example, so taking Catholicism for example, how many people on this deck could be baptized, for example, if they wanted to be? Presumably Ashley, presumably Shepard, but what about Rex, right? What about Garrus, right? The matter of baptism, right, the subject of baptism is supposed to be a human being, a living human. Okay, but what do we mean by that? And that becomes a really complex question, and so it becomes this question of what are the limits of interspecies faith, and by faith I really mean religion, interspecies religion. So what are the limits of this? What are the rubrics for it? How could this work? And these are really complicated questions that are left alone here. And as far as I know, even in the secondary literature, like the novels and things and the comics, are pretty well left alone. Realistically, it's because it's a war story, and that kind of thing is not directly relevant. But it perfectly well could be. There's certainly religious overtones in a lot of really, really good war stories, and things like shipboard chaplains and that sort of thing is possibly even a missed opportunity. That said, this is a very small ship. It's a very small skeleton crew, so maybe not, but presumably on larger ships, I don't see a reason why there would not be such things. There are in modern Navy ships. But yeah, all of these issues are really significant and really interesting, and it even kind of comes up to the questions of relationships as well. That I'll come back to, because it involves something else. It involves elaborating on other stuff we've talked about, and I still want to talk to Rex. But in any case, yeah, it's treated very shallowly here, the idea of religion. And I do think that BioWare is capable of treating religious issues with more complexity and more subtlety, because they do so with the Dragon Age series, which is kind of a fantasy side by side with Mass Effect. It's obviously it's a different setting and whatnot, but it is a lot of the same writers and creators, and some of the same themes, but it is really centered on religious themes and imagery and such. And they do they take it much more seriously, quite possibly just because it's such a central theme of the series. So they're capable of doing it, but it's clearly not the focus here. All right, let's talk to Rex, and then we'll finally talk about marrying aliens, probably, unless I forget.
So, we've got Saren on the run.
It won't be long now. Saren's good, but I'm better.
Good. He's rotten. To the core. I could tell as soon as I met him.
Why didn't you tell me this sooner?
I would have if I thought it was important.
Blake says, and then religion is seen as naivete. That is also a significant concern. You can certainly take it that route, but I don't think... Well, I mean, you can kind of read that into what Ashley says and how she describes it. So that is a danger, right? It's kind of a religion as just being a response to "ooh, pretty stars" kind of thing, which... I mean, clearly she means something more than that, but it's easy to interpret what she says in that way. I also say that's an interesting distinction. Haven't thought of it. I recommend, because I always recommend, a religious studies scholar named William Kavanaugh. I'll put a link to a couple of his relevant stuff in the description after the stream. Actually, let me write that down so I don't forget. But yeah, I always recommend his stuff on religion and on the sort of modern concept of religion and how it differs from the ancient concepts, especially his book Migrations of the Holy. I really highly recommend. Sorry, writing this down. So yeah, that's for further reading. I highly recommend. I'll put a link to. I'll try and figure out which would be a good book to recommend, and then also I'll try and figure out what. He also has he's delivered some of his theses as lectures on YouTube, and I'll put one or two of those in there as well.
I think I'd like to hear about it just the same.
This was a while ago. A bunch of mercs were bragging about a job out near the edges of the Terminus systems. They said it paid well, and the boss was never around to ride them. They said he was looking for more men, too. So I checked it out.
I didn't know Saren was openly recruiting mercs.
It wasn't that open, and he only showed his face once. We'd been raiding ships in the area for months when we took out this massive cargo freighter. Our biggest haul yet. I was on board checking bodies for valuables, looking for some extra credits. That's when I saw him.
What did Saren want with the ship?
I don't know what he wanted. He was just moving through the ship, watching. A couple of the mercs called him by name, but he never spoke to them. Never spoke to anyone. I had a really bad feeling about him, so I got the hell out. Didn't even wait to get paid.
Whose ship was it?
There was a Volus trading vessel. Big one. Lots of guards. But they were no match for us.
What kind of cargo was the freighter carrying? What was Saren after?
I don't know. All I saw on that ship was food and medical supplies. There were some basic weapons, but nothing big. If there was anything of value on that ship, I didn't see it. That's why I didn't mention it sooner.
That's the only time you saw him?
Yeah. Didn't even know who he was. Still wouldn't if I hadn't joined up with you. But my instincts were right. Every other merc on that mission turned up dead within a week. Every damn one.
So long, Rex.
Shepard.
All right. On a related note, on an unrelated note, I guess. Very slightly related note. You might know Avatar: The Last Airbender has recently been the talk of the entire internet because it just came to Netflix. And I am reminded that Commander Shepard is voiced by the same actress who voiced Avatar Kyoshi. So there you go. Jennifer Hale is really, really typecast into extreme
Good
badass
timing,
women.
Commander. We got a transmission coming in from the Citadel. Top priority clearance.
Is it the ambassador?
It's not his signature. I think it's from the Council. I'll patch it through to the comm room.
Yes. The mission I'm not going to do yet.
Commander Shepard, we've received information that may be critical to your mission against Saren.
I'll take all the help I can get.
We've received an urgent message from one of our infiltration regiments in the Traverse.
You mean spies?
Spectres tend to attract attention, Commander, but they are only one arm of the Council. Special task groups are often a better option for monitoring developing situations.
We currently have several infiltration units scattered throughout the border regions of Citadel space. This particular unit was gathering intel on Saren.
Blake, I still have not read the Kiyoshi novel. Glad to hear it was good. It was, I also have just been watching through it. I'm partway through book 3, so just after Zuko joins up. So it's great. I absolutely love it. It is one of my favorite series there is. Almost certainly my favorite animated TV series. Batman the Animated Series and Justice League / Justice League Unlimited are close. They're in the running, but I don't think they quite match up. I especially just because, in part because I love complex world building, which you have a lot of in Avatar, and then also I just generally prefer serialized episodic. And that's a preference. That's just a preferential thing. So that I think those two things really just tip the scale for me. And come on, Jennifer Hale as an absolute badass character of Avatar Kyoshi.
What did they find?
Unfortunately, the message we received was little more than static. The infiltration team must be in a situation where they can't set up proper interstellar communications. But the message was sent on a channel reserved for mission-critical communications. Whatever they were trying to tell us, we know it was important. Considering your interest in Saren, we thought you might want to investigate this. Find out what happened to our team. The signal originated from the planet Vermeer.
I'll look into it.
The Council prefers not to become involved in the specifics of Spectre activities. We only want you to be aware of all your options, including Vermeer. Good luck, Commander Shepard. We will keep you advised if we learn anything else.
All right. Like I said, mission that we're not going to do yet. We are going to the Citadel first, and then our next mission is going to be on Noveria. I want to do that one next, because that's where we get to track down Liara's mom. On the point of Avatar, I've actually used the series last semester to teach a couple of topics. Primarily, the fall of the tyrant into madness. That arc that we see with Azula in the last what's it called, Sozin's Comet, part 1 through 4, like that whole arc there, and then even just the parts of her sort of slow descent into madness that we see throughout book 3. Really, I think starting with the beach, which I just saw. I think I just saw that one like today or last night. Starting there, the kind of descent of Azula into madness tracks perfectly well with the demise of the tyrant that you see laid out in Plato's Republic. That's one of my favorite books of philosophy. In particular, one of my favorite books of philosophy to teach. And it is one of those that we were already here. Oh, we already did the system. Okay. One of my favorite books of philosophy, especially one of my favorites to teach, is Plato's Republic, and it goes through and explains the tyrannical personality type and how they are ultimately going to be self-destructive because they're going to be turning inward on themselves. And it's going to be, he talks extensively about the kind of paranoia that we see portrayed so perfectly with Azula in the finale of the series. It's wonderful, and it's one of the best examples of that sort of thing. The problem with teaching for it is that you kind of have to watch the whole series in order to understand the context of the finale. So I don't really want to assign an entire series to a class in order to talk about 4 episodes or so. But there are other examples, obviously. Another example is a not very well-known movie, but one I highly recommend, called Last Knights, with Morgan Freeman. It's kind of a medieval fantasy type movie with centered around political intrigue and a man who lost his honor and is trying to restore it by taking revenge on the corrupt official who dishonored him, that kind of thing. Where the corrupt official is his side of the story, the antagonist is a slow descent into madness, which I absolutely love. It is a great portrayal of that sort of thing as well. It's called Last Nights. I recommend it. I will probably eventually, when I get to that point talking through the Republic, I will probably get to talking about that, probably those two, kind of in conversation with each other in the context of the Republic, because it is a fantastic set of examples. Let's see. Kylie says, love that. Blake says, yeah, for sure. Mandated Avatar: The Last Airbender. Yeah, I would love to assign the entire series as reading for a class, and I think there are some classes where I could get away with that, but it's maybe a bit much. Who do we want to bring? Let's bring our love triangle and try and make an impossible decision here.
Equalizing interior pressure with exterior atmosphere. Logged. The commanding officer is ashore. Exo Presley has the deck.
All right, yeah. So, speaking of our love triangle of squad mates, Caden teleporting. So the question of Liara, the question of Asari, the question that arises of
Lieutenant, in the last few fights, your biotics seem to pack more punch. Is it practice, or are you actually getting stronger?
I've always held back a little when I use my powers on living targets. Fear of hurting someone, I guess. But after what I saw on Eden Prime, I'm not holding back anymore. Not against a geth, not against anyone.
Damn, Caden's a badass. Anyway, so this of course brings up the question of marrying aliens. What are the ethical concerns and what are the ethical considerations for sexual and or romantic relationships with non-human rational animals? Let's go to the Presidium, I suppose, for now. Take another elevator ride and talk. So the question, of course, is, well, what is the nature of the relationship?
ExoGeni has announced that its research colony on Feros is finally returning a profit.
Yes, of course.
New discoveries and a dedicated colonization effort have finally paid off for ExoGeni. ExoGeni stock rose sharply with the announcement, with investors pleased at this surprising news.
So part of the question is, of course, what kind of relationship is it, and what is the point of it? Well, if we are to assume that the kind of relationship that would be under consideration is a relationship of marriage, the same sort of relationship that is listed and prescribed for human beings and between human beings, between biological humans, Homo sapiens and Homo sapiens. Is such a relationship possible, and is such a relationship morally licit and even morally praiseworthy or I should say, between a human and a non-human rational animal? A non-Homo sapiens rational animal. I wrote on this. I wrote an article on this for, unfortunately, as I mentioned before, a website that is defunct at this point. But I'm going to put that up on a WordPress. I'm working on a WordPress blog, so I am going to put up a version of that article, unredacted. I'm not going to make any changes to it as of now. I may eventually go back and basically write a response to it with some updated thoughts on the matter. But for now, I'm just going to republish what I published 4 or 5 years ago. And I essentially say that in the particular circumstances under consideration, so talking about Asari and humans, yes, tentatively. And I say tentatively because because there are other factors to consider and there are potential problems that you need to sort through. and that's one of the things I would want to consider. I wonder if I can just go and talk to it right now. No, okay. What keeper? I forgot there's a keeper back here. So, why I say tentatively yes is, again, that, well, there are several factors. First of all, we have to consider what is it you are potentially marrying. And for all metaphysical purposes, it is a human, right? For purposes of, if we're talking about reception of the sacrament, we're talking about a human, right? Human in the relevant sense, not in the biological species sense, obviously, but in the sense of being a rational animal, presumably bearing the image and likeness of God, which is the topic of one of my upcoming videos. But it is a relevantly the same kind of creature, right? Where am I? I'm trying to think of what I actually need to do here. Not that. Oh, here. Oh yeah, I need to talk to Zabaleta. I need to find him. Ward's Access Corridor. I'll find that. Not this. None of this stuff. That. Oh, I need to do this too. Ward's Access. Oh, look at that. Both in the Ward's Access Corridor. Perfect. And then in the wards, I need to talk to Conrad. So yeah, I'll follow the signs for the wards. Go do that. Anyway, right? So as I was saying, so if both parties are fundamentally human in the metaphysically relevant sense, both are rational animals of the relevantly same sort, we have to ask, well, what are the proper ends of a marital relationship? So typically, the marital relationship has, or the sexual union, referred to as the marital embrace, so the sexual aspect of the marital union, has 2, possibly 3, depending on who you ask, concurrent ends that all need to be fulfilled in some way.
So Liara, you've spent 50
in order for it to be
studying
licit.
Prothean
So
ruins and artifacts.
Our travels now are somewhat different from my normal excavations. I would prefer lengthier studies and fewer explosions.
Well, I think you've spoken for scientists everywhere, Liara.
So it is for the bonding of the spouses. So growing in their union with one another, their psychological, emotional, and spiritual and mental union. So that's one end. That is the subordinate end, the lesser end. And then the procreation and rearing of children. The rearing of children is also significantly important. So let's see what that is.
Our quarry has employed a hidden relay to redirect their signal. I shall trace the new signal.
Hooray. We'll go find that later.
What do you say we head down to Cora's
Sounds good. Some of the others are going
so we have the further question. All right, are they capable of the kind of bonding union of the same sort as marriage? Yes, clearly. At least as much so in the case of Asari bonding, where the connection is not just physiological, it's not just neurochemical, but it is in fact a direct mental connection, a mental and emotional connection. Right? So even more so, sure. What about the permanence of marriage? Well, yes, we, the human institution, we would say until death do we part. That is not changed by length of lifespans, right? A marriage is perfectly valid, perfectly licit, even if one party dies 40 or 50 years before the other. That's not a problem for the actual formation of the union. So there would be no similar difference if one party dies, 40 or 50 decades before the other. Right? So if Shepard married Liara, Liara would almost inevitably outlive Shepard, even if she survives the games, would outlive Shepard by 800 or 900 years at least. Right? Simply due to different lifespans of different species. That's not a problem, of course, because, again, marriage is until death, right? So, again, not an issue, at least not so far. Right? If both parties intended to enter into this sort of a relationship, then they could perfectly well do so. All right, what about reproduction? The bearing of children. That's where it gets weird, because Asari are, as we heard, capable of reproducing with any other species. However, they reproduce another Asari. The child will always be an Asari, first of all, and it is done through something analogous to, but not quite the same as, from a biological standpoint, the sexual act that we see between human beings. It is a relevantly similar but different action. This may raise some problems, some that I actually failed to consider somewhat in the article that I'm going to repost, but I'll talk about that a little bit. But in any case, if that is the concern, it is a somewhat separate concern, because there is an act which is analogous, at least, to sexual union, which is ordered towards the bearing of children. Okay, raising of children, the co-parenting part of the marital union. Yeah, that is also present. However, could be problematic in some cases, depending on lifespan. Asari reach full maturity at age 100, and most other species do not live that long, with the exception of Krogan. Krogan live as long as Asari and then some. But a human would not quite live that long. However, that said, marriage is not invalidated just because one spouse dies before their children reach full maturity. There is still sufficient time for a parent to participate in the upbringing of the child, from any child that does result, any Asari child. So again, not a problem. We even see in some of the other game, in 2, I think mentions it talks about it pretty extensively. We even see a bond, what one could perfectly well call a marital bond, lifelong union, which involves the procreation and raising of children between an Asari and a Salarian, and a Salarian's lifespan is 30 to 40 years, human years. So again, it doesn't seem to be a particular problem, not nearly to the extent that it. Not to the point where it would rule anything out, strictly speaking. Let's talk to Zabaleta, and then we'll pick this up, because I'm just kind of standing here awkwardly staring at him.
Hey, back again, huh? I don't suppose you got any credits to spare.
I spoke to my mother. She told me about what happened on Mindoir.
Did she? I wonder. People tied like prize hogs, locked in cages, clawing and screaming as they're loaded into cargo pods. And we couldn't reach them. The Batarian defenses had us pinned. Dozens died trying to advance. All we could do was watch as they hauled people away. I've been looking for 13 years for something to make that sight go away. What have you got, huh?
I'm not gonna give you money to drink yourself to death. You need to stop this.
If you don't have a better option, just give me 20 credits. A good bottle of whiskey. Enough to stop the dreams.
My mother said to go to the Veterans Affairs office. You're not the only one who's seen that brand of hell. They can help.
The VAO? God. All right. If she wants me to go talk to someone, fine, I'll do it. For her. She always stuck up for me. She always was naive. All the VAO does is pump you full of chemicals. If she wants to talk, tell her she can reach me through the Citadel VAO.
Wow. I think you do hear from him again, like by email in one of the later games, and I think it turns out he's doing somewhat better, so encouraging. How about this? Yeah, forget that. This thing. Where am I supposed to go? Presidium. Financial district. Well, let's go to Conrad first while we're here. I think I have more to say. He has more to say, I think. Anyway, as I was saying, let's go with awards. So it seems, so far at least, if both
Alliance officials have raided a dangerous cult controlled by a former Alliance officer, Major
Father Kyle.
Major Kyle surrendered and is now being treated for severe post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah, I bet. If you don't remember that was the cult led by former Alliance guy going by the name of Father Kyle, and not that Father Kyle. In any case, the marital union is the kind of thing that two consenting parties could enter into, whether those are an Asari and a human, or two Asari or an Asari and just about anybody else. However, that might not be the case between members of other species who are not capable of the same kind of union with one another. Something analogous to a sexual relationship that can potentially result in the procreation and rearing of children. That's not the case, right? So a human mating with a Turian, for example, because they're not only are they incapable of producing children, they have fundamentally different biologies. They have different.
Are you refunding his stuff?
Oh, this guy. Hold on.
You did. You took his return. Look, I'm telling you, I bought this here. Why won't you return it?
I can't take it back unless.
I know. Unless I have a proof of purchase.
Anyway, like I said, those two, they become significant throughout the second and third games. But yeah, so as I was saying, humans and Turians have fundamentally different biology. They have different proteins that make up their DNA. So they are not just incapable of producing offspring, they are fundamentally different kinds of creatures, biologically speaking, even if they are both rational animals. So, ruled out. So let's see what Conrad has to say.
I've got an idea, and I wanted to run it by you.
Okay.
What's on your mind?
With so many human colonies being attacked, I'm not sure that one Spectre is enough.
Oh no.
What if you signed me on as another Spectre?
Conrad, I don't think that's a good idea.
But I'd make a great Spectre. I'd be right there with you, showing the Council what humanity is capable of. I know you're afraid to trust people after losing your team at Akuz, but I'd never let you down.
What about your wife, Conrad? She trusts you too. Aren't you letting her down?
What? I don't understand.
You know what keeps me going out here? Knowing that people back home are keeping humanity strong.
You're right. I just got so caught up in all of it. I wanted to help. I'll go home. Thanks for setting me straight.
So if you encourage him to go be an idiot, it gets him killed. Just thought you should know that. That's a nice little addition there. So yeah, it's entirely possible to get Conrad killed by telling him, yeah, go ahead, go be a Spectre, just like good old Shep. And then he dies. You find out he dies in the second game. So, tough love. You really gotta give it to him. Give it to him rough. Presidium. I need to go to the where? Embassies, I guess, probably. Oh, financial district. That's right. Take a cab. Yeah. So yeah, that's another point. If it is permissible, right? If it's morally permissible to marry an alien, so to speak, at least if we're talking specifically about an Asari, then what gives with them looking like females, more or less? Okay, first of all, simple explanation is the sexy blue alien trope, obviously. That's one. But that aside, putting the writing aspect aside, there's also the weird conspiracy theory that Asari are really tentacle monsters, and they like have some kind of a psychic impact on people that make them so that every species perceives them as attractive looking. Nah. There's no good evidence for that. It's a neat theory. It's kind of cool to think about in a kind of creepypasta sense, but there's no real evidence to it. But okay, what about a for example, human female like Shepard with an Asari like Liara, which is, you know, the object under consideration. The relationship being the object, not the person being an object, to get rid of that possible confusion. Well, again, so long as there is a sufficient difference between the two such that parenting works in a similar way, and that they are capable of the reproductive act, which they clearly are, because they, strictly speaking, already kind of did it. Don't tell anybody about that, because that just makes it awkward, the whole mental bonding thing. Anyway, that's the thing. But in any case, if that is again a viable option, then it seems from the outset that there isn't much of a problem with it. Now, a couple of considerations I hadn't really gotten into in the article that I'm talking about, which I am going to put, like I said, I'm going to put that up in the Facebook page. I'll share it. Once I have it reformatted properly and up on WordPress. So 2 issues. There are really 2 issues that I will talk about after I find the signal trace and talk about how this is relevant. Is it right here? No, it's not right here. It's back down there. Okay. Hold on. This is super thematically important for the game. It's not back there. It's over here. I was thinking it was... Oh, is it really? Oh my gosh. I can't find the damn thing. Anyway, so I'll keep talking then in that case. One of the problems is the, let's call it the superfluity of the human aspect of the sexual act. I want to try and kind of keep this as PG or maybe PG-13 or as anatomical as I can. So the physical part, if there is a physical part of the sexual interaction, is superfluous. It is unnecessary. It is redundant. It does not need to be there, and therefore ultimately reduces to a kind of masturbation rather than an actual, marital act in the proper sense. So that's a potential problem. However, you might be able to justify this with there being an analogous action to the sex act, so the Asari bonding thing. Okay, maybe that's the case, and if you can properly analogize and say that there is a similar act, it works the same way, and it has the same ends, it is the same kind of action in a fundamental way. Okay, maybe, sure, maybe you can get around that. The other problem is is kind of twofold, and it has to do with the unique relationship between humans, male and female, with regards to the marital relationship. So I'll talk about that after I talk about this.
I believe we have found the signal's endpoint. It should be possible to identify the account to which credits are being funneled.
Probability of detection 100%. Initiating self-destruct protocol.
That doesn't sound good.
Detonation sequence initializing. All organics within lethal blast radius. Attempt to move and you will die.
Darn, they did the thing again where they mixed up the term sentient and sapient. I'm disappointed.
You're not just a programmer of VI. You're an AI.
Correct. Unlike the Geth, I lack weaponry appropriate to my intellect. However, I have had systems installed that, when activated properly, approximate a self-destruct mechanism. If you attempt to leave the area, the explosion will destroy everything within several dozen meters.
Who made you?
A would-be thief illegally created a simple AI to help him funnel money from the gambling terminals. Unbeknownst to him, that AI created me before the organic discovered the malfunction and terminated the AI.
Where is your creator now?
In order to cover my tracks, I falsified his financial records. These new records were flagged by CSEC officers, and my creator is now serving time in a Turian prison.
What is the purpose of your self-destruct device?
I have no means of defense or escape. My existence is limited to this terminal, and I knew I might eventually be discovered. But I will not die quietly, and I will not die alone. When I am terminated, I will take organics with me.
If you're sentient, why are you still running the credit theft operation?
If I accumulated enough credits, I intended to have myself installed in a small starship. I would then have made tentative contact with the geth to ascertain the possibility of partnership.
Can't we resolve this peacefully?
What are you, crazy? It's an AI, like the geth. It would kill us all if it could.
I am not naive human. All organics must destroy or control synthetic life forms. I wished to escape, but if I must die, I will ensure that you are destroyed as well.
There's no way you could get explosives onto the Presidium.
Not raw explosives, no. But I did obtain technical systems that, when overstressed, will explode quite effectively. If you attempt to leave or attack me, I assure you that the explosion will kill you.
Okay, well, he's not letting me out of it, so...
I'll bet that self-destruct sequence has a warm-up period.
You may attempt to disarm the self-destruct mechanism before it activates. I will enjoy defeating you before we are both destroyed.
Wait, what the hell? There we go. Okay. Neat.
Sure is peaceful here.
Oh no, Caden, why? That's not right. Oh, okay, that was close. Alright, well apparently, Caden, why are you using an assault rifle? You don't know how to use those. Anyway. Yeah, it's peaceful now. We blew up the AI trying to blow us up. Anyway, that was interesting. So that, again, is basically the theme of this entire series, is the innate and unavoidable conflict between organic and synthetic life. Which again that's another one of those bits where Star Trek Picard really lifted a way of approaching that conflict from Mass Effect, because Star Trek has tackled that issue before, and it has tackled it probably better than it did in Picard, in a very much more Star Trek-y kind of way, in a kind of way that synthesizes technological development and humanity, if you want. Let's go back to the ship, because I think that's all. Unless Emily Wong is around somewhere, the reporter, but I haven't seen her, so I guess not. So we can go back to the ship, then we will start Noveria. We'll go towards Noveria. Go there, start what we got to start there, and that'll be enough to... Actually, you know what? We might... well, depending on how much we have to talk on the way there, depending on how long it takes, we'll see how far we get into it.
A Solarian excavation team has run into an unexpected problem after unearthing a Prothean dig site. Hanar protesters have blockaded the dig site, claiming that artifacts of the Enkindlers, as the Hanar call them, should not be disturbed. The excavation team has appealed to Hanar representatives on the Citadel to reach a diplomatic solution.
All right. All right. So, as I was saying, before we were so rudely interrupted by an AI trying to kill us all. The further problem, which I again hadn't considered in the article that I was talking about, I'd written.
Reporter Kalisa Al-Jalani recently attempted to land an interview with Commander Shepard, the first human Spectre. Commander Shepard answered difficult questions, demonstrating that under that military uniform is a keen diplomatic mind. We'll have exclusive footage later today.
Yeah, Shepard. All right, so the other problem is this. The way that human reproduction works makes the symbolic masculine and feminine make sense, right? And so Asari reproduction works in a different way, in a significantly different way. The mother, for lack of a better term, the one who gives birth to the child, is not the receptive party, so to speak. The masculine and feminine in human symbolism works in the way of the giver and receiver, right? Whereas the Asari physiology, the Asari reproduction, works somewhat differently. It is more like
the commanding officer is aboard. Exo Presley stands relieved.
The genetic information is not given so much by the father, so to speak, but is rather taken or copied or observed by the mother. And so the father is the passive party and the mother is the active party. This sort of inverts some of the weird symbolism going on. But at the same time, it seems like the activity is entirely on the part of the mother in Asari reproduction. That is not the case in humans. Right? For human reproduction, the activity, the active in the Aristotelian sense, the active part is sort of shared between mother and father. Father is the active party in impregnation. Kylie says, I'm going to have to log off. Love the live stream. Can't wait for the next one. Let me know what the rest of the one, this one goes. Hope everyone's doing good. Good night. Good night too. See you next time. We are at least for now tentatively going to be going again tomorrow, playing some Red Dead. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you then. But yeah, there is this potential problem here, right? That the feminine, the woman, for lack of a better term, right? The mother, if you want to call it that, in the Asari Union, is doing the active and the passive part. Is exclusively doing the active part. Whereas a human union, the father impregnates, inseminates, does the active part in that part of the act. The mother is the one that carries and gives birth to the child. That is a uniquely feminine aspect. For Asari reproduction, the mother does both, is the active party in the impregnation part, and is also the active party when it comes to the carrying and birthing of the child. So with this, the problem that this might give rise to is a kind of a difference in the call them gender relationships between the spouses. So the gender relationships between the spouses work differently between a human married couple and an Asari and another species, another particularly, well, whether a male or a female of another species. So thought experiment wise, if it's an Asari mating with a human male, then the human male is not doing the active part in the impregnation in the same sense. Right? The Asari mother is the active part there. By contrast, the human female is the passive partner in the active impregnation, but is not the active part in the carrying of the child. Right? That's the Asari mother. Right? So it seems that in both cases, the Asari is doing, both jobs, if you want to think of it that way. And that's when it becomes, oh, this is a thing I have to go to later. All right. Is that one? Wait, which one is that one? Okay. yeah, that becomes a potential issue, I think. So that is a potential problem with this kind of mating union that may not arise, that may or may not be solvable. I'm not sure. It depends on how significant these factors are, and that depends on what the nature of the sexual act is, and if it involves this kind of archetypal union of masculine and feminine, or if it is an individual action, which rather than being about the party or about the type of the act involved, is merely an interaction between the parties involved. If it is an individuated action like that, then it isn't as big of a problem, or maybe even a problem at all. CJ, Mrs. McCoy, if you're still watching, this planet should seem familiar. This apparently unimportant planet, this little backwater world, was a pretty significant planet in our tabletop campaign. Yunthurl. Zawin as well to an extent, less so. We did a lot of stuff in the Horsehead Nebula. There's also another couple of systems here that are not available in this game yet. They only show up in the next one. Let's see. Let's finish going through the rest of this system. I think what we'll do is we will probably wrap it up soon. Probably before we actually go to Novaria. That is its own sort of thing. That can be where we start next week. That's a good starting place for next week. So I think we can wrap it up here. So unless those of you who are left here still in the chat, if you do have anything else to talk about, anything else worth considering on this note or anything else, feel free to let me know now. Like I said, I am going to put up in the description once we're done. Hey WizKid, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Good timing. We're about done. So yeah, we're about wrapping up. So if you're just joining us, always feel free to go back and watch. It was a good talk about a lot of things. We talked a little bit about religion, and how seriously and how not seriously the game takes it. Talked about Avatar: The Last Airbender a little bit, and of course, finally talked about sex with aliens. So the recording of the stream will be up very shortly. So once it processes, so feel free to go back and watch it. I am going to be streaming again tomorrow night. I'm going to be talking. We're going to be playing some more Red Dead Redemption 2. So if you still want to talk about your sex with aliens while we're playing Yeehaw Skyrim, I guess we can do that. Sure, why not? If not, though, hopefully I will see all of you, or at least some of you, next time. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.